Hi, today I'm going to talk about units. How does MCalibration specifically handle different units during a calibration and during export? So here's some experimental data that I have. As typically you get files in perhaps a CSV file format, and in this case I have 3 columns: time, strain, and stress. And it's just data, it doesn't have the units in it. And when MCalibration reads in this file, it will ignore any lines that start with some kind of alphanumeric character here. It will become a comment, basically. So that's ignored. And here are 2 other files for the same neoprene rubber. So how do we handle data like this? In MCalibration, when you open it up, you'll see that there are some units. It says megapascals here. So how do we set the units that are used here? Well, we go to Preferences, and under Units, it specifies the default set of units that you want to use. So if your experimental data is in some other unit, you would set the unit here before you read it in, because MCalibration will assume that the data that you read in is in the units that are specified here. So let's keep this to be in millimeters, newtons, seconds, and Kelvin. When you read in data too, it's important to think about what type of stress and strain. In MCalibration, there is a default stress and strain that is specified here. So in this case, I selected it to be true stress and strain to correspond to those data files. In some cases, MCalibration will look at the data file itself and see if it sees the string true stress or true strain, and will switch over to that as it reads in the data. But if it doesn't have information about that, it will pick whatever is specified in this dialog box. So here's the data that I have. I will now read it in here. So how do I read it in? I go to my file dialog here, and I select these 3. I'm going to copy them to the clipboard. And then I'm going to go back to MCalibration. And I'm simply going to edit, paste them in. And that reads in the data from those files here. So we get 1 line for each test. And they're in megapascals in this case. I can then go ahead and select some material mole that I want to use. And I can calibrate this mole and work with it. And then when I export the material mole, I click on Export, and again, now you have a chance to change the units. The setting here is whatever was the default unit. So typically, you don't change the default units here, you just use what you have. But if you really want to export it in a different set of units, you can do it in this dialog before you export it to the final finite element program. But let's say you obtain an MCalibration file from some colleague or someone else, and they happen to have used, in this case, megapascal as a stress unit, but you prefer PSI. What do you do then? Well, you could transfer these files and kind of convert them manually and then read them in again, and then you have to manually change these parameters and all of that. And the units are also specified in the calibrated model history over here. In our new version of MCalibration, you can convert all of these places, the units that are used in all of these places at once, by clicking on Change Units in the menu, the toolbar here. So clicking on Change Menu, I'm going to change from millimeters to inches, force to be in pounds. I want to use seconds, and I want to use, say, Fahrenheit. It doesn't really matter the temperature in this particular example because I have a temperature-independent material model, but just to be specific. I say OK. When I do that, the graph is automatically updated. All of these files, the data in the files, are automatically updated for you. And the material model parameters are also updated, and the calibrated models are also updated. So that's how you can automatically switch everything over. You can then save it in a different file name if you want, so you can have one of each, and it's very quick to do. So these are the different ways that MCalibration handles units. And let us know if you have any other questions.